And then it leads me to, for those of us who were fortunate and have a formal education, I don't know about others, I'll speak for me, but I know sometimes it feels like I have to make excuses or feel like I have to not say I have a formal education, or because some groups, not all, some conversations I somehow get involved in are just, and this will sound so pretentious, but are just so trivial. They're not where I spend my time, right? I noticed since the COVID pandemic, it seems like forever ago now, there's this struggle between, and I'm going to say, the educated and the uninformed, or the ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in a malicious way, just uninformed, lacking knowledge in that particular thing. But I mean, have you noticed that? Warren here, by the way. How are you guys? And that's what I want to talk about today, the continued struggle between the informed and the uninformed. I'll keep it a little bit more even keel. But that's what I want to talk about. But it's not even new. It's not a new thing. This stuff has been happening since, the 16th, 15th century. But I'll get to that. But I want to talk about it too from another point of view that you may or may not have considered. But I know you've heard of the Allegory of the cave, Plato's Allegory of the cave, in which these prisoners are chained together and they're facing the back of the cave and there's a fire behind them, and all they know from all the time that they have been prisoners, all their reality is that which is projected on the wall, the shadows from the fire, which they never see because they're always facing away from true reality. But of course, one, kind of like yours truly, nosy as all hell, and wanting to know more, got out. And on his way out, saw the fire and realized, this is what was projecting my reality. And then as he continued and see more light and eventually the sun, and realize, and an allegory is either a picture, a portrait, or a poem used to depict a story, usually a political one or a moral or ethical one, right? So this is a story. But on his way out, he discovers the sun, the rest of the world. But here's the part that I think you may or may not have heard or considered, which is going to bring me around to the struggle and what I really want to talk about today. After he discovered knowledge, he brought it back to the cave and tried to share with the others that there is more than what we've been told, than what's being projected on this cave wall. Here's the scary part. Because of the fact that that is all they know, his life was actually threatened. He was berated because his one thing went against everything, their aggregate thinking, even though their aggregate thinking was very limited to just the back of the cave. And that's scary because fast forward, or reality, not an allegory, and I could think of 1925, which one was that? The Scopes monkey trial, where a teacher was let go because they were teaching evolution in their classroom. And it went against religious beliefs and other beliefs, which brings me to, what is that? The 16th century, the Copernican revolution, where Copernicus was the first to use science, observation, and measurements, and found out that the Earth was not at the center of the universe and everything revolved around it, but the other way around, which was the heliocentric, which is the sun is and everything revolves around the sun. And the church believed the geocentric, which is Earth was center and everything revolved around. And then Galileo picked up on that in the 17th century, and he was scared to death, play on words there, because his life was threatened if he continued with Copernicus's findings, again, through scientific methods. But these ones went against the aggregate thinking. And the Salem witch trials come to mind, right? When was the Salem witch trials? Not 19. But the Salem witch trials come to mind. Hysteria and, again, misinformation and ignorance led to over 200 people accused of being witches and over 20 executed. I mean, just think about that. Executed because people just started what we would now call rumors. 1692, 93, the witch trials. But I mean, again, because one went against the mainstream. But more recently, even COVID, we saw, and I started out by saying it seems so long ago, but even COVID, we saw where people's lives were threatened, the vitriol and the rhetoric that was wrapped around all of it. But the biggest thing I found with the COVID thing, though, and this bleeds into why there is a struggle between the two, is communication. I mean, I saw the biggest breakdown in communication during the COVID pandemic. And I say it goes to everything, because if you can't communicate clearly to people who are already doubting, then you have more than just a problem, right? You have several dumpster fires going on at the same time. But, and specifically what I saw was that this team that was supposed to inform us, keep us informed and balance those that were in doubt and those that were for science or believe in science, this team was not acting as a team where communication was concerned, and they're trying to communicate to people who couldn't communicate clearly their point of views to each other, and was making threats on people's lives. And here's why. They were not speaking in one voice, like we say in the Army, right? They were not speaking in one voice. One member of the team would be at the podium and say something, the other would either undermine it or say something different, and then this other member of the team would say something, and then the head of the overall team would say something. It was just what we call a hot mess in terms of communication. And that breakdown, where you can't clearly delineate truisms from falsehood, creates the examples I just gave. And we still see it today. I still see it today. And I said that who was it? Epictetus once said, only the educated are free. And some people would think those are fighting words, but he didn't mean just formal education. This is the part that is missing from all of the examples I just used. One of the core things that's missing: uninformed, ignorance, and formal education in and of itself does not give you that. Okay? I can speak to that. It doesn't give you that. And there's problems with formal education. Rote learning, for example, I think is problematic, right? Where everything is just repetition. And it works for folklores and languages, and teaching languages and passing down cultural folklores. It works for that. But too much of anything, a saturation of that, and no room for critical thinking creates a problem too. So you have an education, but it's one in a box. Because, and I know that some of this is cultural. I saw examples of this in some of my uniform travels and some of my fortunate civilian travels. I won't name any specific country, but you see this where this is how it was done. This is how mom and dad, uncle and aunts did it and believe. And so this is how we'll keep doing it. So there's a problem with education too, a formal one, right? When it lacks the freedom for critical thinking. And that bleeds into what we saw with the pandemic. But it's dangerous. It's dangerous because, and I don't think we'll ever go back to the examples I used. Those really just, and you say, Warren, careful, there was Waco, very recent. There was, what's the one in, where was it? Jonestown. So, and others, right? But I don't really think that outside of those nuggets, those little pockets, I don't think we have to worry about as widespread a struggle as the examples I used anymore. But I still think that there is a problem. It stifles our growth as individuals, as human beings, as thinkers. And we're designed that way. We have evolved that way. If our ancestors weren't thinkers, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because they had to think, how do we not get eaten by the predators that we're also hunting, and develop ways to survive, and, oh, by the way, to kill and eat more skillfully, more proficiently. So we're natural thinkers. But here's the problem. We've outsourced our critical thinking to social media, other people to think for us, because we're just lazy. We're lazy. We no longer want to deep dive the details and read the details. So we just read the headlines, or we click, and the clicking nowadays is really what's getting us in trouble. And then people try to blame the algorithm, and it's, in case you didn't notice, take a look in the mirror. The algorithm is you, okay? It only does what you feed it. So if all you want to ever learn or ever be able to talk about are the headlines and never the details and the noise and the vitriol and the false fallacies, all of it, if that's all you want, then, and that's all you click on, then that's all you'll ever be fed. I just say, I'm not going to say stop doing that, because it's not going to happen, right? We're not going to put our phones down or our devices. It's just not going to happen. Kids, it's not going to happen. But broaden our horizons by going to other places, looking for other points of views, and being more objective thinkers. Because I really do think that there's still this struggle between And then it leads me to, for those of us who were fortunate and have a formal education, I don't know about others, I'll speak for me, but I know sometimes it feels like I have to make excuses or feel like I have to not say I have a formal education, or because some groups, not all, some conversations I somehow get involved in are just, and this will sound so pretentious, but are just so trivial. They're not where I spend my time, right? I find that I have to, dare I say, dumb down the way I think and the way I reason to suit the headliners, to just be kind, right? I read the details, and sometimes I get in conversation where I'm talking to the headliners, and that's a struggle. But don't make no apologies for your formal education if you have one. But it's not in and of itself all we need, right? Because life, this universe, this absurdity that we call the universe, provides one large classroom if we just push back some time and become more observers than absorbers, the sponges. Back to the social media example, where we're just constantly just absorbing all the noise and never pushing back and actually observing. We'd learn so much. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that because it's been happening for so long. Even in an allegory, we were told that over 2,000 plus years ago by philosophers that if we stay in darkness, we'll never grow, and we'll just believe what the shadows tell us until we step out of the shadows and into the light. And I think I want to leave it there. But yeah, so until our next conversation, just think about that, all right? And try to unplug a little bit so that we can free up some space upstairs for other things, all right? So until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and we'll talk again soon. I'll see you.